All right, students, now that we discussed some of the body plan and developmental traits that are found in animals, we're going to go through many invertebrates. So we're starting with invertebrates, which are animals without backbones. And this is the closest lineage to protists. So these are more ancient than when we talk about vertebrates like us that have a backbone. That's a more recent derived trait. All right, so initially the first animals were animals that didn't have true tissue. So their organization was at a cellular level, not at a tissue level. So the most primitive animal are the sponges, phylum Porifera, from pores, because they have holes in them. And again, these don't have true tissue. They have a loose federation of unspecialized cells. And they have no symmetry, so they have asymmetry. And so if you look at sponges, they're still able to do all these things like eat and reproduce. So they have these tube structures, and inside the inner lining of them, they have these flagellated cells that move and kind of cause the water to move, and the water then is pulled in from these holes that they have in their structure, and that water goes through them, and so they're able to get organic matter that way. That's how they actually feed. And then that water moves up through this hole called the osculum, so it kind of just moves in this circular manner. So they don't have organs. They have two kind of layers of cells. There are some cells that are specialized. The outer layer of cells protects the inner part of the sponge. They also have these structures, and I have this here. They're sessile, meaning they don't move. They're attached. They have an outer layer. They have an inner layer of collar cells. These are the ones, right, that have these flagella on them. The spicules are these that have that star structure, and they're actually made out of calcium carbonate, so they're kind of like their skeleton. They're hard. That also protects them from animals trying to eat them because they're spiky. Their support and protection. From here, we go to the true tissued animals. So these are animals that have true tissue and have symmetry. So this first most primitive animal with true tissue are the cnidarians. So the cnidarians, the C is silent, so you just said cnidarians, have radial symmetry, right? That means that they're not moving through their environment head first. If you think about a jellyfish, it kind of like, it's not swimming or moving fast. It just kind of hangs out, and it can respond to its environment in any direction. There's two shapes of this radially symmetric. One you're probably familiar with this, like jellyfish, which is called the medusa form, and the other one is like an upside down jellyfish, which is called the polyp structure. And those are with organisms like hydras or sea anemones. Those have the polyp structure. They have two cell layers, so an ecto and an endoderm. They have muscle. They can contract to move like the jellyfish, and they have nervous tissue. They have what is actually called a nerve net, where the nervous system is equally distributed around their whole body. There is no cephalization. Remember that concentration of the nervous system to the head region, because they don't have a head. They don't have an anterior and a posterior region. Their nervous system is equally distributed. We talked about they're radially symmetric. Examples are hydras, jellyfish, sea anemones, coral. And they have a gastrovascular cavity. So remember, the gastrovascular cavity is a sac of a digestive system, right? And so this inside here, they have only one opening. Their one opening is both the mouth and the anus, right? And so material goes into their gastrovascular cavity and then comes out in the same way. Not super efficient, right? But that's how they function. And again, they have nervous system, and part of their nervous system are these stinging cells, nodanocysts. That's where the name comes from. And these stinging cells are released or released out, like when a jellyfish stings you, and they're put into whatever organism they're stinging, and those cells sting, they hurt. If you've ever gotten stung by a jellyfish. All right, from there we go to animals that have bilateral symmetry. Right? Again, this came with the onset of cephalization. So they have a head region, which is called the anterior region, a tail, which is the posterior. They have dorsal is the back, usually lateral are the sides, ventral is the front. And bilateral symmetry was followed with cephalization. Along with body plan evolutions, different things like bilateral symmetry, came the evolution of 3 body layers, right? Instead of like the Cnidarians just had ecto and endo, now we are talking about organisms that have 3: ecto, outer, meso, middle, endo, inside. And in addition to that, the evolution of a coelom, which is a body cavity. So a coelom means body cavity. And the 3 types of worms kind of represent the evolution of the body cavity really well. Where first we have the flatworms, the platyhelminthes, that have basically 3 tissue layers. They have a mesoderm, but the mesoderm isn't hollow. It doesn't have a hollow space inside. The only body cavity are the digestive tract. And then we get the roundworms that have a body cavity, but those are referred to as a pseudocoelom, false coelom, because that body cavity you can see here in white isn't really bordered by 2 mesoderms, as in the true coelomates, like these segmented worms, annelids. If you see here, the body cavity, the coelom, has mesoderm in pink, bordering the outer portion and the inner portion, and that's what's considered a true coelom. So no body cavity would be called a coelomate, right? So these are the flatworms, the platyhelminthes, and these are also the protostomes that arose now. If you remember, the protostomes, the first hole in development is the mouth. Platyhelminthes are a common name flatworm. They have bilateral symmetry. They have cephalization, meaning their nervous system is being directed towards the head region. They have no body cavity because that mesoderm is solid the whole way through, other than the digestive tract, but their mouth, they only have one opening in the digestive tract. The mouth is the anus. A lot of these are parasites, like tapeworms are platyhelminthes, and they're the simplest animals to have 3 tissue layers. Planaria is a type of flatworm that lives in fresh water. They are hermaphroditic, meaning they have both male and female parts. And they have, if you can see this lower part, their nervous system now is being concentrated in the head. That yellow tissue is nervous tissue. They have eyes. Sorry, my dogs are playing in the background. The eyes don't actually see, but they sense light. So that's really the beginning of cephalization. Now, these roundworms or nematodes have a coelom, but it's referred to as a pseudocoelom. These are also protostomes. Kiwi! Stop! Sorry. The reason they're false coelom is because if you look at this cross section, there's an opening, but remember, it's not covered by mesoderm in both sides. These have a complete digestive tract, which means mouth and anus. They don't have a circulatory system, so the nutrients is just in the fluid-filled body cavity, and just kind of via osmosis and diffusion moves into the cells. Trichinella spiralis is a parasite found in pork. This is what this picture is here. That's why they tell you to never undercook pork, because that's how you get this parasite. Now we have the true coelomates. The true coelomates have a real body cavity, meaning it's surrounded by mesoderm on both sides. The advantages of this body plan characteristic is that instead of being solid, by being hollow, it allows the organism to be more flexible. In the coelom, there's fluid, and that's where the organs are. So for example, us, we have a coelom. Our organs, our kidneys, our heart are in our body cavity, right? We don't have mass the whole way through. And that fluid in the coelom helps circulate nutrients. Along with the true coelom came the evolution of segmentation. So if you see the examples here, this worm and this arthropod have segmented. That allows for flexibility. We even have segmentation. If you think of our abdominal muscles, they're layered, right? Like the six-pack, that's segmentation. Our vertebrae are segmented. It allows us to be more flexible. Let me just move on for here. We are still in the protostomes that are coelomates now. Those were, I had just been talking about two body plan characteristics. The phylum Mollusca is this one up here that's composed of the snails, the slugs, the squid, the octopuds. It's a pretty diverse group. They have an open circulatory system, meaning it's not actually called blood. It's more like lymph, just flows throughout the body cavity and surrounds the organs. It's not under high pressure of blood vessel. And again, with the coelomates, we have the annelids, or the segmented worms. These have a closed circulatory system, right? The advantage of that, the blood can move under higher pressure, so at a faster rate. So it kind of supports organisms with higher metabolisms. It also, you can see in this worm, there's cephalization, this little brain here. And I will note that for the molluscas, like octopus, have cephalization, right? They have really big brains. Hydrostatic skeleton, meaning they don't have like a bones, but in their coelom, they put the fluid under high pressure, and their muscles kind of use that fluid, hydro is water, to kind of contract from and move from. So deuterostomes, we are deuterostomes, we are chordates, and so are the echinoderms. So the echinoderms are things like sea stars, sea urchins, and sand dollars, sea cucumbers. Now you may look at them and think, well, these look like they have radial symmetry, which they do as adults. But in the larval stages, right, they have different stages of their life. They actually have bilateral symmetry. And an advantage to having this change is that the bilateral symmetry allows them to move, right? Because remember, the head, they move, and they can go away from the parent, right? They can spread. But as adults, many of them have radials. That's why I put symmetry here. They sometimes are called spiny skinned. They're sessile, meaning sedentary or slow moving. they have actually an endoskeleton that protects them. And they, like the sea stars here, what I'm showing you is that they have these things called tube feet that they not only use to move, but to capture their prey. And their anus is right here, their mouth and anus, so they kind of use this. All right. Then what we're going to end with here is I'm going to talk about the chordates in our next video, because that's the final phylum, the one we are in. We are chordates, and it's the other deuterostome phylum.